welcome to the Players Ball Podcast. We're back at it again. For AT Aliens by AT Aliens. I'm with my host extraordinaire, MB. I'm your co-host, Alex the Great, and it's another week of Atlanta-based sports talk from the greatest in the world, or Stankonia, whichever you want to qualify it as. MB, talk to me, man. How's your week been?
It's been a pretty good week so far. Man, I feel like it should be the weekend already, but still got another day.
Is it the weekend for your kids? They got school tomorrow?
Yeah, they have school tomorrow, but they're out next week with winter break. So
All week?
yes, sir.
Wowzers. Yeah, that's rough, man. Nah, maybe not rough, but so my kids are off tomorrow and Monday. So they only get the two
Oh,
days. Gwinnett I think they they started today, and I don't think they go back until Tuesday. So they got an extra day.
I think this is the first year they've gotten the full week off for winter break, which there's some irony, and I'll kind of use that to lead us into our first discussion, but their winter break is starting next week, and yet spring training is underway officially as pitchers and catchers reported down to Florida yesterday. So we're that much closer to baseball season again.
Yeah, man. You know, Florida has to do everything different.
Yeah.
And it probably feels legit like spring down there at least. It actually was a nice day here, but we've had some very cold starts, even on the nice days.
Yeah, I think I don't know what all teams when they all report, but I know the Braves were not the first to report pitchers and catchers. There were teams that already reported last week, so it's exciting.
Do you know like the different leagues? Like you got the Orange League. I think that like the Florida region has one. Arizona has another as far as the spring ball.
I did know them.
You know anything about that? Yeah, okay.
So I know the Florida is the Grapefruit League. That's what the Braves compete in, and there's one other out in Arizona, and I know the name is something to do with, it's a West Coast desert kind of name.
Cactus League.
The Cactus League. That's exactly what it is.
Is it really?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's a trip.
So I know there's the Grapefruit League. I know there's the Cactus League. I don't know if there's any others. But really the only one that matters is the Grapefruit League, as that's what the Braves compete in. But pitchers and catchers reported yesterday, but they also had a couple position players decide to make the trip with them. Some big names. My boy Austin Riley is one of them.
Money Mike. I heard he was down there already.
Money Mike, Matt Olson, Jared Kelnick, if that's how you pronounce his name. He's one of the off-season additions. So he's an outfielder.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah. So I did see a tweet this morning that it was Austin Riley taking BP, hitting dingers already, and the caption was, "This is for you if you forgot what an Austin Riley home run sounds like."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that crack of the bat. There's nothing like it.
How many home runs he hit last year? He did good, right? Was it 30? He wasn't up there with Olsen or even Acuna, but he was definitely above the 20 mark that a bunch of Braves were ahead of.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he hit over 30. I don't remember the exact number, but the Braves had like 4 or 5 players hit over 30, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. Talking about that, man, I don't know if you saw the CBS rankings. I know you did. I sent it to you. So I'm going to start with the frustrating part of that. Well, we'll start with the good. The Braves came in ranked number 1, preseason ranking, number 1. I think that's well-deserved. We're returning a lot of our roster. Our pitchers should be healthy again. We signed a pitcher who is a question mark health-wise, but if he is healthy, he is going to perform. And Chris Sale, so I think we deserve that number one spot. It doesn't mean anything if we don't win a chip. But the part about that article that frustrated me is that you had to scroll. There was at least 12 inches of scroll where you had to scroll through Dodger talk. I was like, this article is about the preseason MLB power rankings, and like 2 feet of text were about the Dodgers, explaining why, rationalizing why the Dodgers weren't number one, just to go down and say, hey, the Braves brought back most of their players. They're really solid. They're number one. The Dodgers, and it's explained above, but here's some more context of why we put them number two. Like, they have to explain to the world why the Dodgers aren't number one. All right.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers made all the offseason splashes,
They
right?
spent a ton of money, but
Yeah, I mean,
should have
Shohei.
been an independent article, right?
Yeah, I mean, in any normal circumstances, if you sign a player the caliber of Shohei Ohtani, like you're gonna win the offseason, right? Like he's one of a kind. And then on top of that, all the other moves that they did. So, it's really
Yamamoto.
It's really hard for me to believe that the Dodgers aren't the team to beat. Just given you got Shohei, you got Freddie, you got Mookie. I mean, that team is absolutely stacked. And not to say the Braves aren't, but those are 3 MVPs on that roster. We have one in Ronald Acuna, and you have Austin Riley, who should be in the conversation, but has yet to win one, right? Matt Olson
was in the conversation last year.
Matt Olson was in the conversation, but I'm talking about 3 MVP title winners, right? Mookie has won it. Freddie has won it. Shohei has won it 2 years straight for the AL. So, like, that's a beast of a lineup. And screw them guys. I hate them. I hate them for it. Yeah. Especially how they did the salary.
Yeah, and I don't know how they get away with that. The Yankees either. But the knock on them that I saw was that they're pitching, right? Walker Buehler, still solid. They signed the Japanese pitcher, but are you counting on Clayton Kershaw as like one of your premier guys at this point? He might not make it through the season. They don't have a solid rotation. They have some big names, but those guys are either injury prone or on the tail end of their careers.
Yeah,
or unknown.
They had a rookie. So. They had a rookie. I can't recall his name, but he started some games for him last year and he did pretty well. So I mean, yes, their bullpen is, and their starting staff is their weakness, but that's not really saying a whole lot because it's still a pretty solid pitching staff. So we'll see.
Offense doesn't win you playoffs, though. We saw that. Like, the Braves had one of the most prolific offenses in baseball history last year, and we got outed the first round of the playoffs, or the post a wild card. Right? Playoff baseball is about solid pitching.
Yeah, it is.
You're not gonna home run your way to the World Series,
and
we would have just did that. And I don't think the Dodgers will do that either. They need pitching. If they don't have it, they're not gonna win.
But I still think that you have the same issue with our Braves team. Like, we added some pieces to the bullpen. We added Chris Sale, as you said. But I still think it remains to be seen whether or not those pieces are really going to make the difference, right? Yeah. So I'm still skeptical. You did have some key injuries
big injuries
in the bullpen last year, and I mean it is tough as a pitcher to come back and be 100% off of an injury, having not pitched much the previous year. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's a 162 game season, so yeah. I mean, they don't have to come out the gate red hot.
And durability is going to be the most important thing, right? We could still have that killer season. They could have, and I don't want. Let me say this. I'm not denying the Dodgers lineup. It is crazy, right? It's a team. It's a fantasy team. It's better than a lot of fantasy teams. But they're not. Why they were pushed to number two was because they're pitching. And the Braves, we just had that. We're proven from an offensive unit, right? How many games did we win? 13 to 11 last year, right? When our pitching was down. Um, they're the team that if it's not Braves Dodgers in the NL Championship, then I think something went wrong for both of the clubs, and we fell below the expectation that the fan bases have for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still have the expectation that the Braves win the NL East. We got to take care of business and, take care of Philly. I do think they're still a solid contender, but the Dodgers and what they've done, I mean, it does give me a reason to pause in some of the Braves are the best team in baseball conversation because, well, we haven't played any games yet. And when you look at that lineup, it is pretty potent and it should have the potential to be great. I mean, it does have the potential to be great. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. I think the Braves can go toe to toe with any team, but on paper, that's a solid competition.
Yeah, no, I think it's solid. I still say we're 1A. You started it with saying how many players hit 30 plus home runs. Like maybe they don't get the recognition. We've talked almost every episode about Atlanta hate. Ozzy Albies not being in top 10 second baseman. He hit 20 plus home runs last year. Right? They got batters up and down that lineup. It's from 1 to 9 in Atlanta too. I don't know that it's 1 to 9 in LA, but they're 1 to maybe 5 or 6 is super duper solid. I don't know their team as well as I know ours. I know their stars, but I'm gonna put the Braves up against anybody and think that we can win.
Absolutely. And when it comes to a series, right, anything can happen. You just got to win, 2 out of 3 or, 3 out of 5 or, whatever it is for that series. But it's a series game. It's not an individual, it's not knockout games every single night.
Yeah, that's why that pitching is so big.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm ready for baseball. I watched, I feel like almost 150 at least of those 162 games last year. Yeah, so I plan on doing it again.
We gotta get some of those in person, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, that's so last time that I remember being there in person, like heavy, was when we won the World Series. We just had a championship in another professional sport. Right? The Falcons weren't there, but we can talk about the Super Bowl. I think it was a very good game. What were your initial thoughts on the game?
At one point in the game, I was like, man, this is a boring Super Bowl. It was low scoring, but then you turn it on in the fourth quarter, and it was all excitement and high pressure, high stake. We both predicted the outcome, right? Before in our group text, I don't know if you saw, but I said, Patty Mahomes was going to get the MVP and the Chiefs were going to win, which check. Got those predictions right. For a minute, I was a little worried, but you can't rule out Patty and Kelsey and Andy Reid. They just come in clutch. I thought it was a good game. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't recall a overtime Super Bowl in my lifetime, other than the horrific Falcons overtime.
Yeah. They
Um,
had that one. I think if I'm not mistaken, the Panthers Pats went to overtime as well, way back in the day.
yeah, maybe this one was more memorable because the rule changes. Which did you know
Mm,
about the rule changes ahead of time?
I did. I did. It was kind of crazy to hear that the Niners players did not, and
Yeah,
that they hadn't prepped that because that was a really big deal. They changed it immediately following. I don't even think the playoffs were over, and that rule was published for the next season after that Bills Chiefs game because everyone just wanted more football. They thought whoever got the ball first who won the game, so they went down that college route, which I think was a bit of a cop out. Yeah, I like it. I love offense. I want exciting offense. But if you're paying defensive players millions of dollars, they should be able to hold an outcome on that game. And I guess the Chiefs did, holding them to a field goal as opposed to a touchdown. But
but you don't want the game decided by a coin flip, which is essentially what you had previously because it was sudden death, right? Like, let's
mm,
assume you kick off, you get the ball on the 25-yard line. Nowadays, you only have to go 30 yards and you can kick a field goal, right? Like, you need
mm,
2 first downs and kick a field goal and win it. That's kind of lame, in my opinion. I don't think it's a cop out, and they may have copied college to some degree in that each team gets the ball, but in college, you basically get the ball in the red zone, right? Like you're
yeah,
you're
I mean,
already in field goal position. So I do like that
like
it.
don't copy my homework exactly is what they did. It's the same thing. Like outside of the movement of the ball, you know,
I don't
if
know.
there's a little more opportunity for a turnover if you're moving from the 25 because most kickoffs are touchbacks at this point anyway.
Yeah, but even the element of, I mean, we saw a special teams turnover in that game, right, off a punt, but the fact that you have to kick the ball off is an opportunity for error, by either side. Um,
Not kickoff.
it it doesn't
We look
happen.
up the statistics of a bad kickoff ever since that they've moved it up to whatever yard line it's on now. I'm sure it's under 1%.
I'm sure you're probably right, but the fact remains that that is still a potential outcome, even if it's low probability, right?
Yeah.
And then, um, I mean, I just think having to move the ball, a substantial distance, adds an element to it. It's just like playing, it's normal gameplay, right? The only difference is you have a chance, I have a chance, and if my, outcome is better than yours, then the game's over.
Yeah. I mean, we'll agree to disagree. I think it's very much like that. They copy college. I think there is an aspect of it that they held their own to. But when I was saying cop out, it's like I understand that your defense isn't always what got you to that moment, right? But to not allow your defense to win you that game by stopping the team, that's what I'm thinking is a cop out. Especially for a defense like the Chiefs. The Chiefs were, I think they had a top 5 defense this year, right? Um, say they do their job, their offense gets the ball, and then they go and score. If the defense can't do the job, that's a major part of the organization. That's a part of the team. And to your point, they're not starting on the 30. You got to go the whole distance of the field from the 25 to the goal line. If your defense can't hold them, I don't know that you deserve to win that game. You need to have success in all facets of the game in order to win the championship. I think they've eliminated that a bit, not completely, because we saw a defense step up and hold them to 3 as opposed to 7. But
I mean, I guess
defense is less of a factor.
I guess I see your point, but I do think like at that rate, you're making it more about a coin flip, right? Because whoever gets the ball first, if they score a touchdown, it and it's over, then sure the defense didn't do its job, but the other defense didn't even have to try. You know what I mean? So
That's actually a very solid point.
my defense may have let me down, but let me go test your defense. Because in this case, that's exactly what happened, right? The Chiefs defense held them to a field goal. The 49ers did not. And in your, outcome, the 49ers would have won.
Not with 3, right?
Well,
you needed a touchdown to win.
Okay, so I did also hear, and this is, hearsay, but Patrick Mahomes flat out said that they had practiced and that they were going to go for 2 if the Niners had scored. So, that
as well.
That really tests the defense of the Niners, right? First of all, you got to keep me out of the end zone, and then if you don't, you got to keep me from scoring 2 to stay alive. So
that would have been dicey. That's a dicey call. I mean, you're there, go for it, but I don't know, man. Are you making that call? All right. So offense went, or they score 7, you score. Do you go for the win, or do you go for that next possession? I don't think at that point, if they score again, it's over.
Yeah,
you don't get a third. You don't get another try.
Which is different than college.
College, like you'll PKs in college.
Yeah, you go blow for blow until someone fails, and after the first 2, then you have to start going for 2 every time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember it. I know you're not a huge college fan, but there was a game a couple years ago that went like 7 or 8 overtimes. The game lasted like ridiculous long.
The longest game of college history.
I don't know if it. I don't know if it has that title, but it was long enough for them to change the rules that said this isn't happening anymore. And now teams, after the first round, they're gonna have to start going for 2 to try and shorten the game.
So that's a recent change.
Yeah,
last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. But
you think the NFL changes to further accommodate, or do you think that they feel like they had a successful outcome this year?
I think they probably believe they had a successful outcome. I think what hurts them potentially is the fact that 49ers. Now, I don't know if this is an indictment on the NFL or if it's more of an indictment on the 49ers franchise. But having players.
Shanahan, let's say his name. Is it an indictment on him?
But having players come out and openly say they didn't know the rule is not a good look for the 49ers, and potentially, you could say it's not a good look on the NFL, but I think it's more of an indictment on the 49ers and Mr. Shanahan.
Mr. Shanahan. Dog, I knew the rule.
I knew the rule.
I think you knew the rule. They play the game. I'm not expecting them to know lifeline regulations. That's not their industry, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to know the specs on your design craft that you're doing for your job. They should know the rules of their job.
They should.
And I think if they don't, that falls on their boss. And the closest boss to them who's passing that down. I mean, it is organization-wide, like top, the top of the organization. But the face of delivering that has to be the head coach. And look, am I still bitter? Yes. Am I mad that he lost? I am not. But I didn't tell his players not to know the rules. He didn't communicate that clearly, and they were very comfortable saying as much.
Have you heard any of the audio clips from on the field from the coin toss?
I didn't hear that.
Oh, you got to go check this out. So they caught on whatever mic after the coin toss, Patrick Mahomes saying they want it, they can have it, and Travis Kelce reacting to it kind of in the same way. And then on the other side, you hear use check, however you pronounce it, say,
yeah, I think that's it.
Say something along the lines of, so if we score a touchdown, they still get the ball. Like having that kind of realization at the coin toss after they've already elected that maybe they screwed up.
Yeah, I think advantages to second at that point.
Oh, 100%, because you either need to kick a field goal or you need the 7. You know what you have. Like, the target is set.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all in all, overall, overtime game, Patty Mahomes with the victory. I thought that was solid. There was, I saw a tweet that said, "Oh, it was so nice of Usher to allow these football teams to play at his concert." What did you think of Mr. USHER?
Man, I love Usher. Like, he's one of
Yeah,
my
me too,
favorite
man.
all-time artists. I feel like he represented the city of Atlanta very well. He brought out
North to the edge.
he brought out Luda. He brought out Lil Jon. The crazy tweet. I think it was a tweet that I saw. It said something along the lines of, "This is what should have been when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, we missed a prime opportunity when the Super Bowl was here to represent the city with the musical artists. I think when they did Dr. Dre in LA and he brought out 50 Cent and Eminem and
Anderson .Paak.
yeah, like, but the primary, right, it was Dr. Dre, who is an icon in the city of LA. Yeah,
Snoop,
so
right? Yeah.
right. That's what Atlanta should have done when the Super Bowl was here. But it was cool seeing Usher. It was cool seeing Lil Jon and Luda.
And what that was all politics, right? Like, that was during the height of or maybe not the height of, but there was a protest or coronavirus. It's all a blur. But the artists weren't really signing up for it. Something was happening in Atlanta. I cannot remember what it was, but something like that definitely should have happened.
Yeah. I think
the
it ended.
political the political environment at the time, I don't think allowed for that, but
I think it ended up being Maroon 5, which I like Maroon 5. I like their music. However, they should not have been the choice, right? It should have been Atlanta artists. There's a million of them. Like, just take your pick, and you probably could have gotten it right. Just going local.
Even in that, like, I love Maroon 5 too. Big fan, actually. And they have a solid catalog. I don't know that it's Super Bowl catalog. Not on their own. So they had to add other artists. I think Travis Scott might have signed up for it. They weren't alone in what they were doing, and I don't think they could have been. But it was a rush. I can't remember. I had to bring that context in at some point, but there was something that was happening in the city at the time that a lot of artists weren't big fans of, and they were not willing to perform.
Yeah. I didn't go to it, but you've brought it up a few times, that 50th anniversary of hip hop celebration that they did at the Falcons, for a halftime show, and it's like, that could have in a way morphed into a Super Bowl halftime show in Atlanta, right? Bring out all the stars. I will say, you brought up Maroon 5's catalog, and one of the things I heard that people didn't like, I guess, about Usher's performance, which most of the comments I heard were very positive. Most people really enjoyed it. But on the negative side, it was, he only did like 15 seconds of some of those songs. Like, he covered such an array of his catalog that you didn't get very much of any of them, which I can somewhat agree with. Like, I would hear the song, and as soon as I pick up the lyrics, right, he was on to another song, which it was another great one that I loved. I would just flip to those, but it would have been nice to hear, a little bit more of each.
Like a full verse, maybe not a whole song, but a verse.
Like one of them, it was just like the intro beat.
Mm-hmm.
And
The best part, the part that everyone sings.
right. But yeah, I love the halftime show. Enjoyed the skates and the dodgeball outfits. Have you seen those
Yeah.
memes? Yeah.
I haven't seen the memes. Is
Oh
that the
man.
one where he was in the skates with the pecs and the sewn on abs?
He had they had like the blue
Yeah.
shoulder pads and stuff, and people
Mm-hmm.
were saying they look like what was the name of Ben Stiller's Globo Gym? Looked like
Globo
they
Gym,
yeah, he
the
looked
Average Joe's. Yeah,
yeah, he
that's a funny movie.
looked like they were wearing the Globo Gym uniforms. It's pretty fun.
Uh, he was all over the place, man. He had that spaceship of a piano that Alicia Keys was playing. They were talking about Alicia Keys stepping out from behind that piano, the yams on display.
Yeah.
But then he moved from that to a giant record, and then from that to a skating rink, and then by the end of it, like there were so many people, and they were so excited. The stage was like wobbling, bro. It
Oh
was
yeah.
wild.
That was
I
the
was like, man, we about to have a tragedy at the Super Bowl.
I looked at Sarah, I was like, you see the stage bouncing? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
nuts.
he shut it down just in time, man. One more world to the A, and they would have been saying praying for the A.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's kind of a dark transition. Um, we'll save the other segment we talked about for the end. But talking about praying for a city, they're praying for Kansas City right now. Million people come out to their Super Bowl parade. I've been to that place, Union Station. I've been there a bunch of times. I've never been there for a celebration like that. Usually, it's not empty at all, uh, but it's never that packed. And then you have the shooting, right? I think it was 20 or 22 people shot. One person died. Um, like 16 of the people were in critical condition.
Mm.
They had 3 suspects arrested. One they've since released, an adult. They figured out he wasn't involved, but they haven't said anything else about these 2 juveniles. So I imagine, going through what the city of Atlanta is going through right now with the youth, like 11, 12, 13-year-olds having guns, shooting each other, stealing guns from cars is what they're saying. They're stealing guns from cars, and they're just keeping them, and it's a wild time for kids. But they're saying that it was 2 juveniles at the parade that I guess they got into a disagreement and started firing, and a bunch of people were hit. But you haven't heard anything else. They haven't even charged them. I was reading that article just before we jumped on. No one's been charged with anything, so it just kind of seems wild. I hope that all the victims are all right. And prayers out to the city, and that's just kind of unimaginable, right? Like at that peak of joy and happiness, I can't imagine at a Falcons Super Bowl parade. Hopefully, we get one day. Someone getting shot because we wanted it for so long, right? It's gonna be more tears than guns, and we got a lot of guns here, right? It's just sad to see. What do you think about that?
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. It's
Uh,
absolutely tragic. It's sad because one of the first thoughts I had when I heard it was like, I wonder if this is a result of it being their third Super Bowl.
that's wild. Right? I was just thinking that, and I
And
just didn't say it. Like, is that what winning does? Like, people just don't appreciate it.
right. Does it like can people still be mad because they've won too many? Kind of thought is what kind of went through my head, and I was like, no, I mean, there is a mental health epidemic in our country. And
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, there are way too many guns on the streets. Like you and I are both gun owners, right? So we we have an appreciation and a respect for firearms,
Hmm.
and I'm not suggesting that we need to ban firearms by any means, right? But there is an issue with the availability and the fact that they can get into the hands of those that don't need to have them as easily as they do, right? And I don't know what you do if, someone's breaking into cars and stealing guns, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a tough one to solve. I personally don't carry mine. Mine doesn't really leave my house or the gun safe unless I'm, using it. So,
Right.
but I do know a lot of people carry theirs, on themselves and in their vehicle for protection and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, like you leave yourself exposed, for things like this to happen.
Yeah. When I went to the farmers market with my dad, and we were talking about this story, right? And I was telling him about all these stories that I've heard and seen on the news of kids carrying and getting shot, getting killed, shooting people. I'm talking about like 12. Can't even say teen yet. And he was, he's former law enforcement, so he's a big gun. I don't know, we'll label my man as an advocate, but he understands the need of it for personal protection. He still keeps. I feel like I'm giving out the good. He still keeps a gun in his vehicle, but he doesn't carry it. He used to carry it on. I mean, he was a police officer, right? So he was used to having a weapon on him at all times. And for a long time after he had retired, that was just continued trend. But he made this point of, all right, say you're in a position where you are armed and you have a child in front of you that is threatening your life, and you defend yourself. That What does that look like? It feels like the adult is gonna be charged for. I don't know. That could get real dicey, but there has to be a solution to having these kids with guns. How to provide another outlet for them to release this rage. And I think a lot of it is. I don't blame the pandemic, but being at home and the social structure change that a lot of these children went through, like just kind of being isolated for a year. And Georgia got back to work, I guess, sooner than a lot of other states did. But to be without the normal social constructs of a child, right? To be able to go to a playground with your friends and see them on a 5 out of 7 day basis definitely impacts the mental health. I don't know what we particularly do, but we do need to come up with a solution. And I'm not advocating to take anybody's guns either, unless you're not the owner.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm not trying to come into anybody's crib and say, hey, I need you to give up your guns. Seems like a fast way to get shot.
Yeah, especially around where I live.
So you're not gonna take our guns.
But I will say,
That South Park skit is hilarious.
you don't hear and you don't see a lot of gun related violence in my area either.
It's people packing, right?
I
Would you attribute it to that or no?
I think that it definitely has some to do with it, and I'm not saying that that's the answer, but if the perception is that 9 out of 10 houses someone's going to be packing, people are less likely to want to break into those houses, right? Like it is definitely a deterrent. Now, all it takes is one, angry, pissed off individual, not thinking clearly and, going on a raging spree, and all that, goes out the window.
All
So,
right.
yeah, I agree with you on the pandemic side of things. And I do, like I said, I think there's a mental health crisis in our country. Not just kids, adults, and
Adults too. Yeah.
not just because of the pandemic. I think, a lot can be attributed to the fact that we live in a society now where information is so readily available and everything is moving so quickly that, we're
Mm-hmm.
we're overstimulated as a society, and then you um, couple that with the fact that most of the news cycle is all negative things. You know, it's very easy to have a generally negative outlook on our country and on society as a whole. And I think it's hard for people to separate themselves from it. I know when
Yeah.
I was younger and I was in college and I would, look into political structure and certain things and, the Federal Reserve and, things that run our nation, I just get angry. And I had to just separate myself from that and find something else uh, to put my energy into that was just positive, because
Yeah.
if you allow it, that stuff will consume you, and there's nothing good that will come of it. And I think that's where we find ourselves, getting trapped in that kind of, overwhelmed by all the negativity, overwhelmed by just the pure speed and information flow in this country. And then, the coronavirus and locking people in their homes and the, social societal construct that we have, people not spending enough time outside, exercising, kids not running around and playing, being behind screens, communicating through text messages and tweets and all this other stuff instead of face to face. Like, it all has some negative impact. And it's just sad to see. And it's really sad to see a, exciting celebratory event turn into a tragedy
Hmm.
because of all these external factors.
Yeah, it was like the perfect storm of chaos. Just all came together. It culminated in like the last couple of years, and it just we haven't come up with solutions for it. Two movies that I was thinking about while you were describing these things that fit perfectly. The first one was Dennis the Menace. Well, the second one was Dennis the Menace, but I'll talk about Dennis the Menace. I was watching that with Grayson over the weekend. What a hilarious movie, first and foremost. I love that movie. But there's a scene in that movie where literally all the kids, it's nighttime, all the kids are out playing hide and seek, right? And it's like 30 kids. And it wasn't quite 30, but I grew up as an apartment kid, so we ran really deep. Like it was my group of apartment kid friends was like 20 deep, and we would always be together outside playing sports, having fun. I don't know that that's coming back. Right, there's a kid across the street in our neighborhood now that my kids will say hi to, and then we know a set of neighbors. Like we try to know our neighbors, but seeing that level of relation with neighbors, man, it feels like that's just gone. Sadly, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I'd love for my kids to be able to participate in something like that. Second movie is Soul. Have you seen Soul, the Disney movie, Jamie Foxx?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's the scenes where you got the people, these you start in the zone, right, where you're just kind of you just when they're playing the piano. But he says if you stay in that zone, you end up being like those little zombies walking around, man. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are in that place right now where they're just this lump of of self contempt, um, isolated, just disconnected from everything that's going on around them, and they're just kind of walking around asleep, and it's depressing. That's immediately what I thought of when you were talking about the effects of the pandemic. Is like that's real. You don't see it, but it's people that are it feel like they are living in that manner right now.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, you know, the years to come will see some solutions and some things that help. I think mental health awareness has definitely become a bigger topic and less
Hmm.
taboo to talk about. So with that, I do hope that there is some reform and some change. And it's tough. You bring up your kids in the neighborhood. Think about, I mean, you've been to my house.
Yeah.
I have acreage and I have very few neighbors. I'm not in a neighborhood, but we
Hmm.
are fortunate that our neighbors to one side have 3 kids of their own and 4 foster children.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they're
It's
all
not Kent Williams, is
no.
it? Just he has a lot of foster kids, but I
Yeah,
think that's an amazing thing. I learned that recently. But go
it
ahead. Sorry.
is. But they're all varying ages, but they do have some that are around, my kid's age, and it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen as much as like what you were describing and what I grew up with, running around the neighborhood with, all of our friends, but they will,
Hmm.
my kids will go over there, their kids will come over here. They'll play outside. I hear their kids outside, quite a bit, and it does make me happy whenever I see that because I'm like, this is what childhood should look like.
Yeah.
Um, Being outside, playing with your neighbors, having a good time, not stuck behind screens all day.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's a little different. There's one thing that may cure it all. Um, a Falcons Super Bowl. It'll cure for the city of Atlanta. Man, we will live in harmony for at least a decade if the Falcons brought home that championship. I promise you we would. Everybody be outside hugging, crying. I know I would cry. Hugging random people, the city would be at peace for a long time. Maybe we can get the little kids. That's a serious topic to make a joke about, but I honestly feel like even the kids will start. Maybe they'll get back into sports and put the guns down, right? Like, oh man, let's go Falcons! Rise up, baby.
yeah. I mean, we can at least dream for that, right?
Dream big.
Manifest it.
Reach for the moon so at least you land amongst the stars. That's what
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah.
Do you have any Falcons talk you wanna dive into, man?
Not in
Anything real
particular.
big, right? Yeah.
I did hear an interview with Zach Robinson for the first time,
Yeah.
and I was fairly impressed with the things he had to say. One thing that I think he had to say this, but I did find it quite interesting when pressed on the quarterback situation. He said they needed to evaluate what they have and then decide how they want to move forward. And yes, it's a political answer, but it also makes you wonder, right? Like,
It
is
does.
there a crazy possibility that Desmond Ritter is our quarterback next year? I think
Yeah.
it's unlikely, but there is still a chance.
It's not zero by any means. Might even be in the outside of single digits, right? Like 10% chance
I
is
would
what it sounds like to me.
I would say it's probably closer to 20 or 30 to be real.
Oh, now you're just trying to hurt my feelings, man. Slow down there, fella.
I mean, I'm just telling you, if I was an odds maker, that's where I would probably set the odds at like 25%.
Mm.
That 25% chance Desmond Ritter is your starting quarterback next year.
And based on what Zach Robinson said, based on the way it was really Arthur Blank's response and on Lamar Jackson, right? How we had just came out of this financial purgatory, and he does not seem like he is rushing to get back into that. I know he's in win now mode, so I think he's ready to spend money, but allocating that much money to a certain player, so I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be here. But Kirk Cousins not being here is another option out of the bag that
Yeah.
that moves us closer to D Riddy.
Yeah, and I said it on the pod last week, but I would almost be willing to roll Desmond Ritter out again and taking my gamble that I'm going to have a pretty high draft pick next year if I do so and
Mm,
shoot for Shedeur Sanders.
yeah.
and
he did say that.
and build some pieces. You know, we have other needs, right? So plug some pieces in that are going to be long term, and then go for something else. If it doesn't if you don't feel like it exists what you want in the current scenario, then why not run Desmond Ridder out again and just, they would never come out and say that they're tanking, but tank.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah. On the Falcons note, and I don't want to run too far over time because I know there were some other things we wanted to discuss, but our boy Brice Butler got to go out to the Super Bowl with Sports Illustrated, and he got to interview some people, and one of the coolest moments I feel like I've ever witnessed was him getting to interview Deion Sanders, who played alongside his dad, Bobby Butler. They're both South Florida guys. They're both FSU alum. Bobby was towards the end of his career when we drafted Deion, but they did play like a solid, 3 to 5 years together. And just thinking about being in Brice's shoes, getting to interview one of the biggest icons in the sport, but beyond that, someone that got to live day in and day out next to his father, that's gotta be an amazing experience. And even like just hearing Deion talk about specifically, so Bobby, I guess, had the nickname Reverend Press. So Bobby,
also cornerback, right?
Corner, yes.
DB.
Same position. Really, they drafted Deion to take Bobby's place as, Bobby went towards retirement. But Reverend Press, man of faith, always been very vocal about his faith. Deion, young hotshot, came in to take his job, and he talked about how much love that Bobby showed him, and he basically said it was Bobby that he owed a lot of his success in his career in the NFL to, for like taking him under his wing and being the teammate that he was, but also ended saying that Bobby said something, I'm going to butcher Deion's words, but it was something along the lines of, I know one day that you are going to, find Christ and be saved, and like just told that to Deion. And if you watch Deion now, if you go watch Coach Prime and you listen to that man talk, that is a saved man that has completely changed his life. And he attributes not all, but a lot of that to Bobby Butler and their relationship. And I got chills watching. And maybe that's because I have a personal relationship with, Brice to some extent, Brenton, our classmate, his older brother, and even Bobby, being at his house, several times growing up, meeting with him, just knowing him a bit. Like maybe my personal relationship with them impacts this, but I got chills watching that interview, man. One of the coolest things. If you haven't, go check it out. The other cool thing, he got to interview Bijan Robinson.
That's what I saw. I see the Prime. I like that. Yeah, check that out. That sounds amazing. Right?
Yeah, so he interviewed a ton of folks, and I watched a few of them. He interviewed Trevor Lawrence, who's, a Georgia high school, Kennesaw or Cartersville kid. He did Bijan. He interviewed Brock Bowers, coming out of UGA this year. Yeah, so he interviewed quite a few people that I watched, but that Deion one was something special. He actually interviewed Shedeur. So check that one out as well.
Yeah.
But the Bijan one was cool. I enjoyed hearing Bijan's perspective. Definitely go check it out. It's on Sports Illustrated. Super Bowl interviews.
Yeah, I heard the Bijan one, and he said something that really jumped out at me. I like when people aim high, right? And he said he had desires for that 2,000-yard season. He basically knocked his rookie season. Right? He didn't say that it was terrible, but he didn't say that he hit all the goals that he wanted to hit, and I admire that, right? Wanting to be the best, wanting to do things that no one's done or very few people have done. So I like that part of the interview a lot. I think he's a man of character. He too is a man of faith, right? And there's no man like Jesus. Once you get him in your life, you're a different person, right? But yeah, that hearing Bijan's aspirations for himself and the team, and then he mentioned Tyler Algier, right? To say that I think he's gonna have a lot of success with me. I thought that was really foreboding of success for the team. But I definitely got to say, it don't sound like it was near what that Prime interview was. I didn't know he did that, so I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to oversell that Prime interview. Like I said, I think you'll get
It's the greatest interview of all time, right?
Yeah. I think it's cool.
It did sound amazing, though.
Yeah,
right.
no, like it's really cool. It is a great interview beyond, but I do think it means maybe a little something extra to like me, you,
personal connection.
because we have that personal connection. The other kind of cool storyline that's related to their family is, they have Bobby has 4 sons. Brenton was our classmate, Brice, and they got Brindle and Breland, and I forget. It's the second youngest one. He works for Cam Newton's podcast.
Does he really?
Yeah, so he's like one of the producers. He was going to school for like sound and music and stuff, and he was making some music a while back, and I don't know how he got into it, but he got hooked up, works for Cam Newton's podcast, and he was at the Super Bowl week as well, so they had another little family tie there. He got to see his brother, and that's kind of cool. Yeah.
It's important to big up your people as you're going up, man, to pull others up with you. So I love hearing stuff like that. Right? I'm sure maybe he got it on the strength of his own brow. That's completely possible. But if it was, he was connected to somebody and then moved his feet from there. I think that's awesome, man. I'm always looking for the opportunity to plug somebody that I know into a position where I think they can succeed. Right. So definitely good to hear that. That's cool.
Yeah. So I talked to Brent a little bit about it at Theo's wedding party.
Graduation?
No, at the wedding party. Yeah, but and I don't remember exactly what he said, how his brother got hooked up with Cam, but I don't know if Brice had anything to do with it. But it was cool, that they both got to be there, and Brice lives out west and travels all the time, and then they're here in Atlanta, so just I imagine I don't have brothers, but if I had a brother that I got to like see out at the Super Bowl, that would be dope. There's actually another crazy compelling story that's, Falcons related, but also hits us, a little bit closer to home, and that was, Coach Maloof got sent out to the Super Bowl with his wife by Lorenzo Carter, our very own.
Did he really?
Yeah, the Falcons did. The Falcons and Lorenzo Carter has surprised him with tickets to the Super Bowl. I don't know if you're aware, but Coach Maloof, Keith Maloof, became the all-time winningest head coach in the state of Georgia for football this past year.
No way. I was not aware.
Yeah, surpassing his brother or his dad. I can't remember which one, but surpassing one of his family members. I mean, Buddy's been coaching since before we were there. So he's been doing it a hot minute, and for the same school, mind you. So that's kind of cool. Just like a random Falcons Norcross alum nugget right there. Yeah,
no, that's fire. I do like that a lot.
Yeah, but take it a step back to Bijan. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I didn't plan on asking you now, but I'll go ahead and do it. So you made a comment the other week, maybe last week, the week before, but you made a comment that the Falcons had hit on their recent draft picks, and let's just play them in reverse. You got Bijan, you got Drake London, and you got we know the Kyle Pitts. But let's just.
And I've made my stance very clear on that.
Right. but let's talk about the other two. Now, I want to preface this with my opinion is those picks, the players themselves are very good players. And they are good on the Falcons. But I look at those picks as misses because they didn't fill holes that we needed. So with that, I want to hear your side.
Okay. So specifically when I was talking about we hit on the picks, I'm talking about last year. I think it was more than just Bijan that we hit on. Very solid contributors in Clark Phillips, Zach Harrison. I think I don't know how good he's going to be, but we got value out of our lower level picks or our later picks in our lower level. Bijan, from the things that you saw him do, he is a difference maker, right? There were things that were battling against him or a person specifically, several people that stopped him from showing that full potential. I don't think that will be handicapped as it was this year, next year. There's just a couple of plays, right? The play that he had against the Packers where number one, one thing real quick. The other thing that he said in that Brice interview was Brice said that he was used to seeing him run through people, right? And you didn't get to see a lot of that in the Falcons. There was a touchdown, one of the highlights that I was about to mention, where he like dipped back, jumped forward, went left, went right, and the camera was moving with him. But at the end of it, he ran through two players. I didn't know that he had a power style. I just thought he was all swiftness. This is way too early to say, but he looks a lot like LaDainian Tomlinson to me.
That's who he said he modeled his game after.
And if he can be even a shade of LT, that pick of him at 8 is a hit. It's a hit, right? You can't determine whether or not a pick was a success. You can determine if it was a success after a year. You can't say that it was a failure after a year, especially with the quarterback that he had, some of the coaching decisions that he had. He fumbled more than I would like, but he was pulled out of games completely.
Yeah.
Because of that, right? So the coaching decisions and the quarterback play, I think they handicapped him. I think he definitely would have been, you give him a solid quarterback, he's in the running for Rookie of the Year. That's how strongly I feel about the ability that I did see.
Yeah. And like I agree with you. I think he's going to be a superstar. I was more so looking at it from the standpoint of you have clear needs, right? You're coming off a season in which Tyler Algier ran for over 1,000 yards. First 1,000-yard rusher you've had in, quite some time. You didn't need another running back. And to be honest, adding that running back piece, superstar or not, didn't get you any more wins in the win column. Right? You
looked a lot better. The team looked a lot better. The defense was a lot better. And I feel like that's what you're talking about. Drafting a defensive player, drafting an offensive lineman. We draft that player at 8. We don't look better than we did with Bijan. There's
So
not a player, unless it's like C.J. Stroud, who wasn't there.
So, you said the team looked better, right? And you go to the defense look better. Bijan don't play defense.
He didn't, but that's why we could draft Bijan, because we had another way to address the improvement in defense. We paid money for a defensive improvement.
But
And we drafted some of it. I mentioned Clark Phillips and Zach Harrison. Like, they were very solid. We brought in Bud Dupree, signed Calais Campbell. So we had a plan for that side of the ball, which makes drafting Bijan at 8 for me more feasible.
yeah, I look at some of the players that were available, right? And if you draft Jalen Carter at 8, you can't tell me that that's not a better team. Offensive production wise, we got worse last year.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So consider we're just looking at the passing statistics, we were not worse last year than 2 years ago. There's no way.
Passing wise, no. 2 years ago, we were a much more effective running team and had more points per game. We're higher
and
ranked.
You attribute that to what? Offensive line, who you carried over every player. You didn't need to draft another offensive lineman. Right. The only position that I slide in there over Bijan is a quarterback.
Well, you had a healthy Cordero Patterson for the full length of those seasons as well, plugging in with Tyler Algier. That tandem was more potent than the Bijan, Tyler Algier, and then towards the end, sprinkle a little in CP.
It was a heavy seasoning of CP. He wasn't fully involved, and I don't think that you can successfully run an offense with 3 running backs, right?
No.
You have to feature somebody, and then you can have a thunder and lightning. You can't have thunder, lightning, clouds, earthquake. That just doesn't work. You need momentum. You need reps in order to have success in the NFL. At least that's what I'm looking at outside looking in. Yeah, I think the offense. I think the offense was better. I don't know about ranking wise, like where they finished ranking wise, but I think they looked better. You take away some of those miscues from Desmond Ridder. Even leaving all of that in, it looked better. Right, we could not pass the rock. We could only run, and then the offensive line played worse, and you wouldn't expect them to have a decline just because they had success the year before. But you couldn't have counted on that. You don't draft an offensive lineman after you sent one to the Pro Bowl as a starter and another as a reserve and paid them all this money. And Jalen Carter, I don't know. Was he pretty impactful for the Eagles this year or no?
Yeah, I think he was like one of the highest graded defensive linemen in all of football, and especially rookies.
What does he play? He had DT? He had tackle?
Yeah, he would have played next to Grady.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you make a solid argument, and I do think that Arthur Smith, should carry a lot of the blame for the shortcomings of the offense. But personally, I don't think the offense looked better from my eye test. And as far as being able to
just to be clear, like the Marcus Mariota offensive, you saying looked better to the eye test than the Desmond Ridder one?
Yeah, so Desmond was able to throw the ball better, but during the Marcus Mariota experiment, we were running the ball, with ease. We beat the Browns last year, not this past season, but the year prior, strictly running the ball, right? Like,
we had wins like that this season.
No,
they didn't come as often. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first time we played the Saints, we ran for like almost 250, 300 yards.
We did dominate that game on the ground. You are correct.
And there was more than one instance of that.
But I think it was still a more even split. I mean, you didn't have a single 400-yard passing game with Marcus Mariota, and
at all.
Desmond Ritter
You barely
eclipsed.
had a 200-yard passing game with Marcus Mariota.
Right. And you were still losing games by one score, right? Your margin of loss was about the same with Desmond Ritter as it was Marcus Mariota. The difference was you were a little bit more balanced with Desmond Ritter. But I look at that as a negative thing when it comes to Bijan, because I put, an 8th overall pick in value on him, and he didn't make my run game perform better. And that could be play call. He is going to be
being pulled out of the game. That's a big thing. That happened every time he fumbled, he was pulled.
Yeah. And like I said,
can't do anything from the sideline.
I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he is a superstar. But I still look at that draft and say we didn't need to go out. Like, Bijan was a pick you pick if you have the luxury of, picking him. Not when you have as many holes as this team has and you already have more than one solid running back option on the depth chart.
Yeah. I mean, they signed David Onyemata, right, to play next to Grady. And when Grady was playing, that defense was completely different. Right? They were still solid after the fact, but they weren't nearly as good. So I think that was the play for not drafting Jalen Carter. They just looked like they wanted to spend money on defense. Maybe the writing was on the wall for Cordell Patterson. He didn't play a lot during the beginning of the season because he was hurt. Right? And you can't ask. You don't want 3 running backs, but you don't want just one to run. Getting 30 touches a game. Burn that man out, and who knows where his career goes from there.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Bijan was the right pick. So outside of Jalen Carter, is there anybody else that you would have picked?
So I was trying to figure out where he went to see if he was available, but like Sauce Gardner came to mind. He went 4th, so he wasn't available. So I'd have to go back and look at that draft, but I do think that there were other options that we could have gone for that would have enhanced our team. Maybe actually put some additional wins in the win column versus Bijan. Now, next year, all that could, be turned on its head, and Bijan can, put a 2,000-yard rushing season together. We could win, double-digit games, and everything I will just say, every bit of my argument will be null and void. But, I did, have the thought, based off of what you said, we hit on them. I'm like, well, I don't really know if I believe that at this point. Basing it off of one season's result, I would say the jury's still out, and I would lean towards we missed from the pure standpoint of we didn't win any more games with him on our roster.
Yeah.
He wasn't enough of a difference maker to give us more W's. And think about that.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And that's compared to
even the Marcus Mariota led team. But even what you're saying, the jury's still out, right? I can get on that train. It feels like you're saying that it was a miss more than the jury's still out.
Yeah, and I don't mean for it to come out that way. It was more of, the jury's still out, but if you had to grade it today, I would probably grade it as a miss. Just because of those, other points that I mentioned. We didn't win any more games. He didn't single-handedly win you any games. Not that one player should ever, but an 8th overall pick is a pretty high value.
Mm-hmm. But if we're going off of needs, right, you don't get the quarterback. That's what we needed.
Well, you needed a lot of things. You really need
We spent money on a lot of things. You had to factor that in because that happened prior to the draft.
We didn't sign Bud Dupree before the draft.
We signed David Onyemata. We signed Caden Ellis. All of our big money went out before the draft. Caden Ellis. Who was our Pro Bowler?
Jesse
Yeah,
Bates.
Jesse Bates. All three of those guys got signed prior to the draft.
Yeah. And, they were all serviceable, but they weren't other than Jesse Bates. Like, none of
I was
them.
about to say serviceable. Come on, man.
None of them were game changers, right? Like,
Jesse Bates was an all-pro, but you're excluding him, right?
yeah, I'm saying the others that you mentioned that play defensive line, edge, linebacker, those, front seven. And that's where.
Caden Ellis was second in our team in tackles.
Yeah. But someone's got to tackle somebody, right? That doesn't.
There we go.
Keith, don't get me wrong. I used to love Keith Brooking, but the knock on him, he would lead the team in tackles, but he was tackling people 6, 7, 8 yards off the line of scrimmage in the wrong direction.
We talked about this on an earlier pod, right? How the tackle leader on most teams is the linebacker.
Yeah.
It was odd that Jesse Bates, for me, it was a discredit to defense that Jesse Bates was our leading tackler. It's a credit to him, but Caden Ellis was the linebacker that was behind him. I think linebackers just in more position to tackle people, right? The defensive lineman doesn't have the opportunity to tackle somebody catching a pass in most plays. Right?
Yeah.
So the numbers for Keith Brooking, a legend. That always made sense to me why he would lead the team in tackle. He's closer to the ball more often than anybody else on the field.
Yeah.
But we've dove super. I don't even think we were planning on talking Falcons, so I'll take the blame for that. Right? We went heavy on the Falcons, man. I want to circle us back to an end segment to Mr. Raymond. Right? We are both huge Usher Raymond fans. Earlier in the week, we heard the top 5. I want to see your top 3. I want to make it a little harder on you. Your top 3 Usher songs, and we can close with this.
I don't know if I can put them in order, but
yeah, fair. I don't want to put mine in order, so I'll take that.
And I'm gonna break a rule that one of the other that other list placed, and Lovers and Friends has to be in the top 3. I don't care if it was on Crunk Juice.
Excellent song.
I don't care if it was on Crunk Juice. That's an Usher song. I gotta go my way. That's what brought me to Usher, right? I was listening to it in the car on Tuesday night. Sarah and I went out for Valentine's dinner early because that's when we had childcare. But we were listening to it. She had never heard the song before, and I told her, I was like, I remember this music video so vividly from watching watching it on MTV so many times. So My Way's got to be in my top 3. And then to me, Nice and Slow has to be in the top 3. You said it, the USHERRAYYNOND. So I got to go with those 3. What about you?
I'm gonna go with Nice and Slow for sure. The next one is more of a, when I was listening to Usher as a child, go figure, I was more into his baby making songs. So he has this song called "Can You Handle It?" And I love If I Go There Baby with You. That song is crazy to me. I love that one. And then for personal reasons more than anything else, it's a fantastic song, but that There Goes My Baby. That came out during the early throes of my now marriage, but the early throes of our relationship, me and Brittany's relationship, that There Goes My Baby. I said that was our song, and then that was a special song to me. So that's my top 3. That's what I would give you for that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Can You Handle It? That's a solid choice, man.
That's my jam there. And I have been listening to the Usher. I've listened to him twice since the Super Bowl. Right, he's been on rotation again.
They
But I hadn't
said
listened a whole lot.
they said his streams have gone up like 5x since the Super Bowl.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
And
I
it's
gotta give that new album another spin. I went through it pretty quickly, and it was, it seemed fairly average, if I'm being completely honest, below his caliber. But I'll give it another shot. I gotta listen to it in some headphones, and maybe I'm missing something in the production or.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny cuz, Sarah grew up in a completely different home lifestyle, whatever. Don't know the best way to put it, but very very sheltered in a way.
Yeah.
And so like she knows the music that came out when we were in college and stuff. Like in the
Mhm.
club and shot.
Right.
Like the the hits in the early to mid, 2000s. But she doesn't know the early
Mhm.
stuff and just playing the music, she was like, "How
Yeah.
do
What was
you?"
her take on My Way?
She's like, "Well, first of all, nice and slow." She was like, "This is the most ridiculous song that I've ever heard." Just in terms of like the lyrics. She's like
Yeah.
she's like, "Why did you listen to this?" And thinking about it, it's the most ridiculous thing. We were like in elementary school, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, the music is top notch. But when you really break down the lyrics and the meanings in that song, like you said, baby making music, uh,
Mhm.
it is hard to kind of take some of it seriously.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
but
lyrics.
music is it's artistic expression,
Yeah,
right? I
for
don't
sure.
have to be living in that to be able to appreciate it. It doesn't even have to be true, right? That's rap.
Yeah,
That's the entire rap genre. Most rappers ain't doing none of the stuff they talking about.
right.
Um, I don't know what Usher was doing. His songs were very popular with the ladies as well, so maybe some of that he was living, but I know we weren't, right? That is. So yeah, nah, I can definitely agree with her there, right? It
Yeah.
probably inappropriate listening, but it is what it is, man. There were worse songs, Pony, right?
Yeah.
You're horny, let's do it. Like that song, I sang that song as a
Yeah.
child at the skating rink, right? Like every word. So, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I
different
remember
time.
listening to Eminem, Bonnie and
Oh yeah,
Clyde and songs like that back in like third, fourth grade.
Stan. You remember
Yeah.
Stan? Yeah,
I don't
tired
remember.
of the trucks, killed her. His
Yeah.
song drove her off a bridge.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Um but yeah, it's funny to see Usher kind of make a resurgence. And it is like there's a lot of nostalgia there. There was a
Yeah, there is.
comment, I think Squid Billy made it on the radio, and he's like, remember when we used to watch the Super Bowl halftime show and think that these were just like old people that only our parents could appreciate? It's like, now we're those people.
No, I don't think that's true. I think Jay-Z has brought freshness to the Super Bowl halftime show. It's been different since he has been involved with it. So you had the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson thing, and they just killed youth during the halftime show. And it was like just old people for a long time. But I remember, I think one of the first ones was like Bruno Mars. That wasn't Jay-Z yet, but I think the last like five have all been artists that multiple generations can rock with. People that are older than us, people that are young, not that much older, but the generation up, the
Yeah.
40s. They know Usher. Uh, Usher, Rihanna, J Lo, and Shakira. That was a crazy show, man.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's been hits. I'm curious to see if they can keep it up. Only dud was that Atlanta show, and I'm gonna have to find it and drop that on the next cast. um, why that was as terrible as it was when you have one of the meccas of music.
Yeah.
You had the biggest stage, most eyes. This was the most watched event. This past Super Bowl was the most watched event in television history. So it's a crazy time. But man, I think with that, man, I think we go ahead and we close it out, brother. Um, if you like what we're talking about, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend.
Rate,
Give it to your
review.
parents. Yeah, rate, review, comment. Let us know.
Hit that
We
notification
appreciate your
bell.
time. Hit that notification bell.
So with that, everyone, keep listening. Have a good night.